Prince Andrew has been besieged by questions about his 12-year friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted sex offender who took his own life earlier this year in a New York jail. This woman, Virginia Roberts, now Virginia Giuffre, claims she was a victim of sex trafficking. She alleges she had sex with the prince 3 times, once in an orgy on Epstein's private island.
He knows exactly what he's done, and I hope he comes clean about it. Thank you.
Now Prince Andrew says he has come clean about it in an interview with the BBC.
I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady.
Last month, after a detailed analysis of flight logs and the court circular, Channel 4's Dispatches programme established that it was likely the infamous photograph of Andrew with his arm round 17-year-old Virginia Roberts was likely to have been taken on March the 10th, 2001, at Epstein's friend Ghislane Maxwell's Belgravia townhouse. Prince Andrew says that on the night of March the 10th, he couldn't have been dancing and having sex with a teenager because he was in suburban Woking, taking his daughter Beatrice to a party here at Pizza Express. He says he's only been to Woking a couple of times and remembers it weirdly distinctly.
I'd taken Beatrice to a Pizza Express in Woking for a party at I suppose sort of 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And then, because the Duchess was away, we have a simple rule in the family that when one's away, the other one's there. I was on terminal leave at the time from the Royal Navy, so therefore I was at home.
Why would you remember that so specifically? Why would you remember a Pizza Express birthday and being at home?
Because going to Pizza Express in Woking is an unusual thing for me to do. A very unusual thing for me to do. I've only been to Woking a couple of times, and I remember it weirdly distinctly. As soon as somebody reminded me of it, I went, oh yes, I remember that.
Virginia Giuffre says on their first encounter, she and Prince Andrew danced at Tramp nightclub. She recalls him being a hideous dancer and sweating profusely.
She was very specific about that night. She described dancing with you and you profusely sweating, and that she went on to have bath, possibly.
There's a slight problem with the sweating because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at the time, and that was, oh actually, yes, I didn't sweat at the time because I had suffered what I would describe as an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War when I was shot at, and I simply it was almost impossible for me to sweat, and it's only because I have done a number of things in the recent past that I'm starting to be able to do that again. So I'm afraid to say that there's a medical condition that says that I didn't do it.
He suggested the picture of him and Virginia may have been doctored.
I don't believe it's a picture of me in London, because when I go out in London, I wear a suit and a tie. That's what I would describe as those are my travelling clothes if I'm going overseas. So I've got plenty of photographs of me dressed in those sorts of sort of kit, but not there.
Just to clarify, so you think that photo has been faked?
Nobody can prove whether or not that photograph has been doctored, but I don't recollect that photograph ever being taken.
In 2008, Epstein was jailed for procuring an underage girl for prostitution and soliciting a prostitute. Yet just 2 years later, in December 2010, Andrew visited him at his New York mansion.
You said you went to break up the relationship, and yet you stayed at that New York mansion several days. I'm wondering how long...
But I was doing a number of other things while I was there.
But you were staying at the house of a convicted sex offender.
It was a convenient place to stay. I've gone through this in my mind so many times. At the end of the day, with the benefit of all the hindsight that one could have, it was definitely the wrong thing to do. But at the time, I felt it was the honourable and right thing to do. I had to go and see him. I had to stay
with him and stay in the house.
I could easily have gone and stayed somewhere else, but sheer convenience of being able to get a hold of the man was. I mean, he was in and out all over the place. So, getting him in one place for a period of time to actually have a long enough conversation to say, look, these are the reasons why I'm not going to, and that happened on the walk.
Survivors of sexual violence say they're appalled at Andrew's failure to show any sympathy for Epstein's many victims. Royal watchers say in striving to answer questions, he's only raised many more.
Do I regret the fact that he has quite obviously conducted himself in a manner unbecoming? Yes.
Unbecoming? He was a sex offender?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm being polite, in the sense that he was a sex offender.
The FBI has been investigating Epstein for months now. Prince Andrew says he'd be prepared to give a statement under oath if his lawyers advise it. And you can watch that Channel 4 Dispatches film, The Prince and the Paedophile, in full at www.channel4.com/programmes/dispatches. Well, joining me now is the biographer of Prince Charles and co-founder of the Women's Equality Party, the writer and campaigner Catherine Mayer. Catherine Mayer, these are quite lurid allegations, of course. Is there a sense that Prince Andrew does have a right to speak out and defend himself?
That's difficult. He has the right to speak out, but then there are questions about giving him the platform to do so, particularly when his interview entirely erased the victims. Even at the end, where he was given this chance, is there anything more you'd like to say? He couldn't bring it. He couldn't even think of talking about them.
Well, he did say, he let the side down. He said that Epstein's victims were quite rightly being heard. I mean, he was remorseful up to a point, wasn't he?
That point sort of began and ended at the beginning of the interview, and it wasn't remorse. It didn't look like remorse. The point about what he said about the victims, he made that one comment. He then also made the extraordinary defence that he wouldn't have noticed young girls in Epstein's house because he's surrounded by staff all the time. So he clearly was suggesting that people at the edge of his vision aren't even quite human or definitely not worthy of notice. It was a really bad interview. But
he also said he didn't see any young girls. I mean, he was clear about that.
No, but he also said he didn't see them. He may not have seen them because he is used to being surrounded by staff. That's literally what he said. And the point about this interview is that the overwhelming sense that came through was that he saw himself as the victim.
Well, is there a sense, in some ways, that he was outclassed intellectually by Epstein and in some way was himself manipulated by Epstein?
I think that there's no doubt that he was outclassed intellectually, but that's also why it's a problem and why so much of what we're looking at is about this wider culture of impunity. So at the point where Prince Andrew goes and stays with Epstein, who is at that point a convicted paedophile, and his picture is taken and used now, whatever the circumstances of that, he's giving cover to Epstein. It's part of how this always works in a way. One of the things that the Me Too movement has really struggled to do is to take it beyond the stories of individual victims and look at the kind of enablers and the systems that give cover and appear to give legitimacy and the ways in which organisations defend themselves. So I think, although that wasn't the intention of this interview, one of the really useful things about it is that you kind of saw the way in which he talked about it, the dinners that there were in Epstein's house, the other people there. And
a cosy club. Really.
The cosy club, and the idea that there was always this attempt to cover and deny and close down, which is, Well,
he said he was never aware at the time of any issue with his behaviour. But, what does his conduct and the way he conducted himself in this interview say about the British establishment, do you think?
Well, that's why I'm saying it's so useful, because it shows you, and by the way, it's not just the British establishment, it goes beyond, but though the British establishment is particularly bad this way, and the media laws make it harder than in the States to bring some of this stuff to attention. But, look at Westminster. There were 20 MPs who were highlighted in Me Too allegations. None of them resigned. And the parties, instead of doing anything to deal with it, immediately start closing ranks. And very often you find that the people who are the whistleblowers are the ones who are demonised. I mean, that's why the Women's Equality Party is running the candidates. It's running against men with unanswered allegations. But, you know, this is, what we are seeing is absolutely, when he talked about letting the side down, the side he meant was the establishment, the monarchy. He let light in accidentally.
Well, how do you think now the establishment in question, the monarchy, will respond to this? Do you think he'll end up giving evidence under oath?
I don't know what he will do. I am sure that that very large parts of the monarchy and the mechanics of monarchy will be horrified by what he's done. And I suspect that there will now be pressure put on him either to go very quiet or, as one would hope, to help those victims get justice, whatever that looks like.
Catherine Mayer, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.